Why would she say yes? They laughed like it was just another joke, easy, harmless. The quiet girl with the old violin. Of course she wouldn't. But then she did. No smile. No stutter. Just a quiet nod that silenced the room. Why would the invisible girl step into the spotlight she's spent years avoiding? Don't blink. When she plays, the truth won't just be heard, it'll shake you. At Summit Ridge Middle School, life moved in swarms, bodies flooding hallways, sneakers squeaking, lockers slamming shut like punctuation to half-finished conversations. Teenagers floated between bell chimes and TikTok trends, talking over each other like no one ever feared silence. But silence was where she lived. Ivy Quinn didn't walk like the others. She slipped through spaces, careful not to touch the world too much. Head low. Steps soft. Her backpack sagged to one side from the weight of a worn, old violin case, its leather edges frayed like the corners of an overread book. Every morning, she chose the same path, through the side entrance, past the janitor's shed, up 2 flights of stairs where the railing creaked on the 3rd step. She didn't need the main doors. The main doors meant attention. She hated attention. Her seat was always the same, back of the room, far left, beside the window. The desk had a leg shorter than the others, so it wobbled when she wrote, but it let her see the sky. That mattered. Sometimes, during math or history, when the noise grew too sharp, she'd focus on a drifting cloud and pretend it was music. Something slow. Safe. No one sat beside her. Not by design. Not out of cruelty. She just wasn't invited. The teachers never called on her. Not because they disliked her, but because she gave off the air of someone perpetually on the verge of breaking. Like a porcelain cup too close to the edge of a shelf. Let her be, they seemed to think. She's quiet. She's fine. She wasn't fine. But she was used to being invisible. There were whispers sometimes. In the hallways, behind her back. She doesn't talk. Always has that violin. Like she's in a movie or something. Do you think she even knows what TikTok is? She heard them. She always heard them. But she never reacted. Because Ivy Quinn had learned one thing very early. Silence was safer than trying. At home, silence was music. In that apartment on the 3rd floor, the violin was her language. Her only language. It filled the empty spaces. At school, though, the violin made her stranger. She carried it because it was part of her. Because she didn't know how not to. Because it was the only thing that ever listened back. Some teachers had stopped asking about it. Others never asked to begin with. To them, she was just that girl with the violin. A passing label. A background blur. No one saw the hours she spent tuning the strings during lunch. The way her fingers ached from holding the same chords over and over again, not because anyone asked her to, but because the music inside her refused to stay still. No one saw her. And she had almost accepted that they never would. Home wasn't far from school. Just a 20-minute walk past the gas station with flickering lights, down 2 cracked sidewalks, and up 3 flights of uneven stairs in a building that always smelled faintly of mildew and old takeout. Apartment 3C. The walls were thin. The heater groaned like it was begging to be retired. But inside, it was warm, worn down warm. The kind of warmth that came from shared blankets and second-hand furniture, not thermostats. Ivy lived there with her mother, Monica, and her 7-year-old brother, Jamie. Monica worked nights as a janitor at the downtown courthouse, double shifts, when she could get them, always on her feet, always too tired to say much, but never too tired to care. Every night at 6:45 p.m., Monica would lace up her black work shoes by the door while Jamie ate cereal for dinner and Ivy tuned her violin. "Don't stay up too late," her mother would mumble, kissing Jamie on the forehead, and then pausing at the door to glance at her daughter. "And don't wear your fingers out." Ivy never replied. She'd just nod. After the door clicked shut and the hallway footsteps faded, the apartment would settle into its nighttime silence. And then, like clockwork, Ivy would open the violin case and begin. No amps. No headphones. Just her and the open air. The bow would glide across strings with slow precision, every note a whisper, every rest a breath held between heartbeats. Jamie would listen from the couch, head tucked into a blanket, his breathing syncing with the rhythm of her playing. It wasn't just practice. It was confession. She wasn't aiming for perfection. She was chasing something else, something older than technique and louder than applause. Truth. She remembered what her grandfather told her, the first time he placed the violin into her small, trembling hands. "You don't play music to impress people, sweetheart. You play to say the things you're too scared to speak." He was the only one who ever taught her. He'd passed away 3 years ago, but his presence lived in every stroke of her bow. In the scratches on the wood, in the way the rosin dust caught the light, in the way she held the violin like it could anchor her to the world when everything else felt like it might fall apart. That violin had been his. The varnish had faded, the bridge was slightly warped, but it sang when she touched it, honest and raw, like it remembered everything. And if she missed a beat, if her rhythm wavered, 3 soft knocks would sound from the wall behind her. Tap. 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 A signal from her mother's side of the thin bedroom wall. No words. Just 3 knocks. Always 3. It meant, you're slipping. Not out of impatience. Out of love. It meant I hear you. It meant try again. So she would. Again and again. Even when her fingers ached. Even when tears slipped silently down her cheek and dampened the chin rest. Even when the world outside felt like it was moving too fast, too loud, too full of people who'd never understand her. The music understood. And so she played. Every night. Every breath. Because it was the only place where Ivy Quinn didn't feel invisible. Third period was physical education, but today, no one was in the gym. Instead, Coach Buckley stood awkwardly at the front of room 2B, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, his whistle swinging like a pendulum from his neck. The class sat half attentive, half bored, with the windows cracked open just enough for sunlight and yawns to sneak in. "All right, listen up," he said, voice gruff but not unkind. "As some of you know, we're bringing back the Spring Talent Show. This Friday. I need names. Acts. Guts. Whatever you've got." A few kids perked up. Laughter bubbled in pockets. Someone muttered karaoke disaster part 2, and a ripple of giggles passed through the room. Coach Buckley cleared his throat. "You've got until tomorrow to sign up. Don't make me pull names out of a hat." From the back corner, Ivy barely looked up. She had her violin case tucked beneath her desk, fingertips absently tracing the latch. Then, like a strike of static in a silent room, a new voice cut in. "Well, why not let our little violinist give it a go?" The words hung there, sweetly poisoned. Ms. Darla Simmons, the math teacher filling in for the day, leaned against the whiteboard, a dry erase marker tapping rhythmically in her hand. Her lips curled in something that wasn't quite a smile. "You've been bringing that thing to school all year, haven't you?" she continued, eyes narrowing on Ivy like a hawk spotting a mouse. "Would be a shame if no one ever got to hear it." The class turned like sunflowers toward the back row. First came the snickers. Then a low rumble of laughter, not cruel, but casual, effortless. The kind that doesn't need to shout to hurt. The kind that assumes you won't do anything back. Ivy's shoulders tensed. Someone whispered, "She won't." "No way." "Does it even work?" Another voice chimed in. "Bet it's just for show." Miss Simmons chuckled softly, stepping back toward the whiteboard. "Just a suggestion," she said innocently. "Unless, of course, you're not ready." All eyes were on her now. The girl no one remembered suddenly becoming the center of gravity. She should have looked away. Pretended not to hear. It would have been safer. That's what she always did. But something, maybe it was the tilt of Miss Simmons' head, or the way the room was already laughing at a performance that hadn't even happened, tightened in her chest. Slowly, deliberately, Ivy stood. The room hushed. Chairs creaked. A pencil dropped. Coach Buckley looked up from his clipboard, brows raised. Even Miss Simmons froze, the marker still in mid-air. Ivy adjusted the strap of her violin case. "I'll do it." The words weren't loud, but they hit like a cymbal crash. Silence. You could hear the wind pushing against the open windows. The buzz of the overhead light. The heartbeat of every student suddenly realizing they were staring too hard. Miss Simmons blinked, caught off guard. Sorry, what was that?" "I said I'll do it," Ivy repeated, voice steady. Her gaze didn't waver. Not from the teacher. Not from the class. Not from the weight of their shock. Coach Buckley scratched the back of his neck. "Okay then. Violin solo. Got it." He scribbled on his clipboard. The moment stretched, taut and breathless. Then someone laughed, unsure. A nervous cough. A whispered what just happened. But Ivy had already sat back down, face unreadable, hands calmly returning to the violin case in her lap. And just like that, the quiet girl had done something no one expected. She stepped into the light. The sign-up was done. Her name, Ivy Quinn, sat awkwardly between a hip-hop dance duo and a kid who could juggle bowling pins. No one said anything about it in the halls. Not directly. But the sideways glances spoke loud enough. Still, she didn't back out. Instead, she began to write. Not with words. With sound. The melody came to her the same way her memories did, uninvited, unruly, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't something she copied from a sheet or found online. It came from inside. Notes tangled in half-healed wounds, rhythm pulsing with all the things she'd never said out loud. It started like a whisper. A soft, aching hum in the key of loneliness. Then came a strange dissonance, sweet yet unsettled, like raindrops tapping on a window just before a storm. She didn't know what to call it. It wasn't classical. It wasn't jazz. It wasn't blues. It was her. Untitled. Raw. True. She filled 2 pages, crossed out 3. Restarted 4 times. But something about it stuck, the way the notes bent, slid, pushed against each other. It was imperfect. Which made it perfect. She shared it with only one person. Malik Jordan. He was a 7th grader, who always carried sheet music folded in the back pocket of his jeans, and had hands that smelled like piano keys. Somehow, he was the only person who ever dared to talk to her more than once. They met sometimes in the dusty music room after school, when the janitors had just started mopping and the sun cast long golden stripes across the linoleum floor. "So this is what you're playing?" he asked, eyes scanning her handwritten notes, brow raised. "This isn't Bach, girl. This is..." "Weird," she muttered, already pulling the music back. "No," Malik said, grinning. This is something they've never heard before. He leaned against the edge of the upright piano, tapping the rhythm on his thigh. Don't try to be anyone else. Play the thing they can't compare to anybody. Ivy looked up at him. What if they don't get it? Then they'll feel it, he shrugged. Sometimes that's better. At home, she practiced until her fingers throbbed. Her thumb blistered. Her shoulder ached from holding the violin too long. But still, she played. The apartment filled with sound each night, bending and soaring, sometimes beautiful, sometimes brutal. It didn't matter. It was real. Until one evening, as she hit the end of the second movement, her bow trembling on the final sustained note, she heard it. Knock. 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 Her mother. Through the wall. Ivy dropped her arm, sighing, frustrated. A few seconds later, the bedroom door opened. Monica Quinn leaned against the frame, still in her janitor uniform, her eyes tired but sharp. You're gonna break your wrist if you keep going like that, she said, arms crossed. Come eat. I'm not hungry. Her mother didn't move. Didn't push. Just looked. It's not about them, baby. Ivy's eyes flickered up. It's not about proving anything to that teacher. Or that class. Or anyone else. Monica stepped inside, lowered her voice. You play like this. For you. Not for them. Ivy swallowed hard. But they're all gonna be watching, she whispered. Her mom knelt down, touched the violin where it rested on her lap. Then let them. Let them see what you sound like. The next morning, Ivy rewrote the ending of her piece. She didn't soften it. She didn't polish it. She made it louder. The gym had never felt so loud. Bleachers squeaked under the weight of restless students. Neon posters fluttered on the walls, hand-drawn and half-peeled, shouting phrases like Summit's Got Talent. And be bold, be loud. The buzz of microphones, feedback screeches, bursts of applause, all of it echoed through the cavernous space like waves crashing inside a hollow shell. Ivy sat alone near the side entrance, violin case on her lap, shoulders square, eyes down. She was number 16 on the list. And the list was long. A boy in a sparkly jacket had just juggled plastic bowling pins while beatboxing. Two girls from the cheer squad sang a duet off-key, but got a standing ovation anyway. Someone performed a comedy skit that mostly involved shouting inside, jokes no one outside their friend group understood. Ivy didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. Her fingers stayed curled around the handle of the violin case like it might float away if she let go. She could feel the looks from a few rows up, teachers, whispering behind clipboards. Students twisting around to get a glimpse of her. The girl who said yes. The one with the violin. Is she seriously gonna go through with it? Coach Buckley stood by the announcer's table, flipping through the running order with tired eyes and a wrinkled t-shirt that read Go Thunderhawks. He leaned into the mic. Next up, we have contestant number 16. A pause. A slight cough. Ivy Quinn. A ripple of silence passed through the room like someone had hit mute. Then came the murmurs. Who? Wait, is that? Huh? Oh man, this is gonna be awkward. Malik, sitting 3 rows back near the piano, clenched his fists and leaned forward. Ivy stood. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. She walked past rows of students who parted like water, not out of respect, but confusion. Some chuckled. Others whispered. But no one expected much. She was that girl, after all. The quiet one. The background blur. The ghost with a violin. The gym lights felt harsher on stage. The microphone loomed in front of her, untouched. She didn't speak. Didn't wave. Didn't smile. She walked straight to the center. Unlatched her violin case. Lifted the old, scarred instrument out like it was a piece of her. And then, she breathed. A long, slow inhale. Malik watched from the bleachers, whispering under his breath like a prayer. Let them feel it. Ivy placed the violin against her shoulder. Her fingers found their places like soldiers returning home. And without a single word, she played. The first note barely made it off the strings. A fragile hum, trembling, uncertain, like a bird testing the wind. It quivered in the air, almost swallowed by the size of the gym, the restless bodies, the weight of eyes. Someone near the front stifled a laugh. But Ivy didn't stop. She let the bow glide across the strings again, longer this time, braver. Still soft, but with shape. With intention. The crowd began to lean in. The third note bent, cracked slightly. A wrong tone, but real. Human. It sounded like fear dressed in velvet. And then, she found it. The center of her own storm. Her right hand moved faster now, sliding the bow with growing confidence. Her left fingers danced across the fingerboard, pressing down with precision and memory. She closed her eyes, not to shut the world out, but to let it in. The melody swelled. Not neat. Not perfect. But raw. Honest. It was a voice crying out from the dark. Do you see me now? Do you hear me now? Each note twisted and turned like a heartbeat skipping. There were moments of stillness, gentle, aching pulls that held their breath, just long enough to make you ache with her. And then came the fury. A crescendo surged like a wave crashing against stone. The strings screamed, beautiful, broken, blistered. And in that sound was everything. The lonely lunches. The whispers behind her back. The 3 knocks from the other side of the wall. The words her grandfather never got to hear her say. She wasn't playing for them. She was speaking to them. In a language deeper than words, older than logic. A sound that made even the worst listener feel something they couldn't name. Malik leaned forward, eyes wide. His mouth barely moved. Oh my God. In the corner, Coach Buckley stood frozen, his clipboard forgotten. Miss Simmons gripped her pen so tightly it snapped. No one noticed. Because no one could look away. The final section tore through the room like fire. Ivy's body moved with the music now, shoulders swaying, chin tilted, fingers a blur. She looked like she might fall apart right there on the stage, but she never missed a note. Every motion was deliberate. Every sound earned. And then, a pause. Not silence. Stillness. Just one breath suspended in the air. And the last note. Not loud. Not showy. Just pure. Soft. Like forgiveness. It faded slowly, ringing out into the cavernous gym, until there was nothing left. Ivy held the final pose, bow still raised, violin to her chin, eyes closed, as if the world was made of glass, and she didn't want to break it. Then she lowered the instrument. Silence. No one clapped. Not at first. They were too stunned. It wasn't the kind of silence that asked what was that. It was the kind that whispered I felt that. Then a single clap. Then another. Then all at once a wave. Applause erupted like thunder after a long drought. Not polite. Not pitying. Real. A few students stood. One kid shouted, "Let's go, violin girl." And the crowd laughed, not mockingly, but with joy. With awe. Ivy didn't smile. Didn't bow. She just looked down at the instrument in her hands, cradling it like something holy. Like something that had finally been heard. She stepped off the stage without a word. The applause still echoed behind her, a distant roar fading into something softer, something surreal. But Ivy didn't turn to look. She didn't need to. She just held the violin tight to her chest, like armor, like memory, like breath. Backstage was quieter. Cooler. Her legs felt strange beneath her, as if the floor had changed beneath her feet. Her heart wasn't racing anymore, but it wasn't calm either. It beat steady, low, deep, like a drum inside her ribs. Malik was the first to find her. "You didn't just play," he whispered, wide-eyed. "You set the whole damn room on fire." Ivy blinked at him. Not smiling. Not speaking. She didn't need to. Coach Buckley approached a moment later. No clipboard. No booming voice. He stopped just a few feet from her, hands in his pockets, shifting his weight from one leg to the other. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. That was something. A pause. Then a small nod. "Good work, Quinn." That was it. He turned and walked away before she could respond, if she even planned to. But it wasn't dismissal. It was respect. The kind that doesn't know how to say itself out loud. Miss Simmons, on the other hand, didn't move. She stood frozen near the gym doors, arms crossed tight, lips parted like she wanted to say something but forgot the words. Her eyes flicked toward Ivy once. Then again. Then down at the floor. Guilt and surprise wrestled silently on her face. But she said nothing. Not that it mattered. Because silence from her, for the first time, felt like an admission. Then came the softest interruption of all. A hand tapped Ivy's elbow. Gentle. Familiar. Mrs. Trish Randall, the art teacher, had always been the quiet type, chalk-stained fingers, warm eyes, always carrying a mug that said "Create something honest today." She didn't speak. Just offered a folded piece of paper. Ivy took it without question, her fingertips smudged with rosin dust. Mrs. Randall smiled, soft and brief, then walked away, humming something low under her breath. Ivy looked down. In careful, looping cursive were the words. "When they don't expect you to shine. Shine brighter than ever before." Ivy didn't cry. Didn't smile. She just pressed the paper between her fingers like something sacred, then slipped it into the pocket of her coat, next to a broken pencil and her grandfather's tuning fork. And for the first time, she looked around the room. And the world looked back. Monday morning. Same hallway. Same rust-colored lockers with peeling paint. Same bell chime overhead, sharp and insistent. But the silence felt different. Ivy stepped into Summit Ridge like she always did, head low, violin case in hand, shoes scuffed from the walk across the gravel lot. But something shifted. The hallway didn't part for her the way it used to. It paused. Eyes followed her, not with ridicule, not with confusion. With attention. Not loud. Just present. 2 8th grade girls near the lockers whispered to each other as she passed. "Is that her?" "Yeah. That's the violin girl." And for once, it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like wonder. A tall boy from the basketball team nodded at her as she passed. Another kid, someone she'd never spoken to, actually moved aside to give her room by the drinking fountain. It was subtle. Uneasy. Like the school was still trying to make sense of the shift. But it was real. At the end of the hall, Coach Buckley stood by the trophy case, sipping burnt coffee from a travel mug that said "Number 1 Dad." He spotted her from the corner of his eye and straightened his back a little, clearing his throat. "Hey there, Quinn," he said, voice rough as ever but softer around the edges. "Heard you." Made quite the impression Friday. He scratched his neck awkwardly. Just wanted to say, well, good job. Real good. Ivy blinked at him, then gave a quiet nod. Thanks. He nodded back, like that small exchange had exhausted his emotional vocabulary for the month. Keep that up, and maybe we'll have to get a music trophy in that case. He chuckled and walked off, muttering into his mug. Kid blew the roof off the gym. The math hallway was colder, quieter. Miss Simmons stood by her classroom door, arms crossed, not with judgment this time, but nerves. Her expression was unreadable until Ivy got closer. Then she stepped forward. "Ivy." Her tone wasn't sharp like before. It was careful. Human. "I wanted to," she hesitated, looking down at her shoes, then back up. Her voice dropped. "I owe you an apology." Ivy didn't say anything. Just waited. Miss Simmons swallowed. "I made a joke that wasn't fair. I assumed things about you. That's on me." She sighed. "I'm still learning not to misjudge people. Even now." Ivy looked her in the eye, calm and clear. Then, with a voice like the bow sliding across strings, firm, precise, she answered. "You should have seen me before Friday." A beat of silence. Then Miss Simmons actually smiled, small, but genuine. "I think I see you now." As Ivy turned down the hall toward her next class, someone called after her softly. "Hey, violin girl." She turned slightly. It was the same girl who once laughed behind her in class. But now, she looked hopeful. "That thing you played. It was like, I don't know, like my chest hurt after." In a good way. Ivy didn't know what to say. So she just nodded. And walked on. For the first time, she wasn't walking through the school. She was walking in it. The violin case stayed shut that night. It sat quietly in the corner of the living room, still dusted with rosin from the night before, its latch closed for the first time in what felt like weeks. Ivy sat at the dinner table with her family. A chipped ceramic plate in front of her. The smell of buttered rice and microwaved green beans filled the tiny apartment like it was something grand. Jamie, her little brother, sat cross-legged in his chair, his spoon tapping against the edge of the bowl as he studied her face. "So," he began slowly, with the gravity of a 7-year-old who knew this was a big deal, "did you win?" Ivy blinked, her fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at him. Then, for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. Soft. Real. Without defense. "I didn't play to win, Jamie." "Then why'd you play?" he asked, eyes round. She set her fork down gently. "To tell the truth." Jamie tilted his head. "With music?" She nodded. "It's the only way I know how." Across the table, their mother paused mid-bite, watching her daughter with eyes that held pride too big for words. No one said anything for a moment. And for once, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peace. The next day at school, Ivy walked through the front doors, not the side entrance, not the back staircase. The front. And the strangest thing happened. Someone waved. A boy she barely recognized. A girl from gym class smiled, genuinely, and said hey. Another student asked if she was writing more music. Someone else complimented her boots. It was bizarre, but not unwelcome. At lunch, Malik saved her a seat. She sat down. Not under a tree. Not in a shadow. At the table. "So what now?" he asked between bites of his sandwich. "Now?" Ivy looked around. The cafeteria buzzed like always, noise, movement, chaos. But for once, it didn't press in on her. She shrugged. "I guess I keep playing. Same piece." She shook her head slowly, her voice quiet but sure. "No. A new one. One that starts here. And maybe people wouldn't always listen. Maybe the world would go back to forgetting her name. But not today." Today, they saw her. Today, she smiled back. Later that night, long after the dishes were washed and Jamie had fallen asleep mid-sentence, Ivy sat by the window. The violin still rested in its case, unopened. She didn't need it tonight. Outside, the city buzzed in quiet rhythm, distant cars, a barking dog, the hum of a street lamp flickering across the parking lot. And inside her, a calm had settled. Not silence. Something better. A stillness that didn't feel empty anymore. She thought about the stage. The stairs. The applause. But more than that, she thought about what came after. The way people spoke to her now. The way they saw her. The way she saw herself. She reached for a scrap of paper and scribbled something down in the dark. Just a line, just a thought, but it came from the same place her music did. The truth. Not everyone will clap for you. But if you play your own song, one day, they'll have no choice but to listen. She folded it carefully and slid it into the pocket of her violin case. Right next to Mrs. Randall's note. And finally, Ivy Quinn closed her eyes. And let herself be heard.